Welcome everyone to the Derpzilla channel, and today I have another video on one of my vehicles, this time a 2014 Chevy Impala Limited. I actually just purchased this from Carvana for my oldest daughter to drive to and from school, and actually for myself to drive a little bit when I don't feel like putting miles on the 21 Camaro ZL1. As mentioned earlier in the video, I purchased a 2014 Chevy Impala Limited. Now that word limited actually means quite a lot in this case, as it is a carryover model from the 9th gen. So it is a 9th gen, not a 10th gen, which actually simultaneously was in production from 2014 and up. So if you're ordering parts or doing any kind of work on it, you have to take into account that it is actually a 9th gen Impala, even though it is a 2014. Along with the cheaper price of being a 2014 Impala Limited and not a normal 2014 Impala is you have the drawbacks of somewhat more older technology, including the gauge cluster and the key. And being a used car, unfortunately, I only got one key, no key fob. The unfortunate reality of having a single key and no key fob is, yes, it's inconvenient, especially with it being 2023. And I also don't really have high confidence in my daughter not locking this key in the car, and there's no other way to get it out. It's hard to remember versus having a key fob. You hop out, you hit the lock button, and the key's already in your hand. So it's harder to lock your keys in the car. It's possible, but more rare. Now, as for solutions, some trim packages of the 9th gen Impalas do offer a method to program a key fob in your gauge cluster. And there's a bunch of videos on that. And unfortunately, I guess this trim, the LT, Impala Limited, does not offer that as a solution. So I actually found what hopefully is a solution: the Dorman Help ODB2 key fob and programmer. As you can see here, plugged into your ODB2 port, and using the key fob that came with it and the programmer, you should be able to program this key fob to your car. This should work for all GMs that have the same setup from 2011 to 2015, but also I would assume the 2014 to 2016 Impala Limited with its older technology and interface. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing opened up. We're gonna take a look at the instructions and see what we need to do to get this thing hopefully programmed to the car. This is everything included in the packaging. Of course, you have your standard looking key fob. It looks pretty much like the OEM one from what I've seen in photos and in videos. It has the lock, unlock, trunk, and alarm button. Also has the programmer. If you're familiar with having any kind of programmer tool or anything like that, this looks pretty standard. And it will plug into the OBD2 port underneath your driver's side dash, right in kind of the center. And be careful because the actual port you'll plug into is kind of just snapped in there. And if you yank this thing out pretty hard, you might pull it with it. So just be careful with that. And then also you have some instructions here. And it does point out that if you have other key fobs laying around, or if somebody else has your key fobs, once you do this process, those will be cleared, and only the key fobs that you program in this session will be what you can use with the vehicle. We're going to go over the instructions real quick, and you don't want to be fumbling around with this, trying to figure this out while you're actually doing a recording session in the vehicle. So real quick, we're going to go over this. Very simple. You have 2 minutes. Your session will time out, and you can no longer program any key fobs after that. And you can only do 3 sessions with this programmer. So if you messed around or done 3 different sets after that, I guess it will no longer function. So first off, you're going to get in the car, close and lock the doors. You're going to insert the key in the ignition and turn the ignition on, but do not actually start the engine. You're going to then insert the programmer into the OBD2 port, and that, like I mentioned, that should be below kind of the steering wheel, underneath the dash, kind of center. And then once you've actually inserted that, you're going to wait for a chime or an orange light on the programmer to come on, and that means it's ready to program. You're going to then press and hold the lock and unlock buttons on the remote right here simultaneously for about 10 to 15 seconds, and you'll hear a chime, a buzzer, or the door locks will cycle. Once it does that, that programmer has been done, and you can move on to another key fob. You can do this for, I guess, how many of remotes you have. I'm not sure if there's a limit, doesn't really mention. And then you're going to wait for about 60 seconds, and the buzzer should come on, and you can unplug the programmer. You can go ahead and then test your remote, make sure it locks, unlocks, and all that fun stuff. I probably should have bought another key fob as a spare and programmed it with this one, but I guess if I get another key cut, I can worry about that at that point. But as mentioned, you can only do 3 programming sessions in total. So this will be the first one. When I get another key and a key fob, that'll be the second session, and I only have 1 more. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the car and hopefully get this key fob programmed and make my daughter a happy camper. At the front driver's side door, and as you can see here, the dashboard, and underneath the dash, if you see that port right there, that is the ODB2 port that we're going to be plugging the programmer into. Doors are all closed and locked. Key is in the ignition and turned, but the car is not started. We should go ahead and be able to plug in the programmer, and the steps on here look a little bit different than the steps on the instructions. On the programmer itself, it has a little cheat sheet, and it does say insert key, turn the ignition on, which we did. Don't crank, insert programmer into vehicle's OBD2 port, which I will do here momentarily. Wait for a buzzer sound or a red LED on the programmer. Press and hold the key fob lock and unlock buttons simultaneously until a buzzer sounds or door lock cycle. And then if you need to do more key fobs, repeat steps 4, and then remove the programmer from the port. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing plugged in and see what the car does. I'm gonna go ahead and plug this in. The dash, it says remote key learning active. So I'm assuming that means I can hit the 2 buttons simultaneously. It's non-stop chiming. Oh, I'm not sure if that, I didn't hear anything cycling. It's chiming a lot. It doesn't mention it chiming a bunch, so I'm not sure if that's saying this is done, but then you're supposed to wait 60 seconds and it should complete the process. The programmer is now solid red and the message on the dash is gone. And it appears it's working. I can remove the programmer. Programmer is unplugged from the port, and doors are still locked. As you can see there, 2 clicks unlocked it. 1 button locks. This button's really, I mean, you have to push this thing. It's not, the controller feels, the key fob feels super kind of cheap. So when pushing in here, you have to push your finger almost in the button into the freaking fob. I'm not sure. Hopefully this thing doesn't fall apart, but I don't know if you can't really see it over here. It's too dark, but 1 button unlocks the driver door. 2 unlocks all the doors in the car, and a single button on the lock button actually locks all the doors. Okay. Holding down the trunk actually popped the trunk. I just heard it. Okay, the emergency button doesn't seem like it does anything. Maybe because I'm in the car, I'm not sure. But yeah, overall, the key fob works. I probably used 2 sessions because the first one didn't seem like it worked. I redid everything again and was more patient, and it seemed like it programmed the second time, so it might mean I only have 1 more program session left. But overall, can't be too sad about the overall performance because it did program it. I have a key fob now. My daughter will be happy. Trunk pop works. Door locks and unlock works. The emergency horn button didn't seem like it was doing anything. I'll test that later, but if I don't mention it, then this doesn't do anything maybe. And yeah, the only gripe I would say is the key fob itself seems super cheap. This button is super bad. I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but I have to sink my finger into it. The unlock button seems better. I don't know how this is going to hold up, so I'll report back if I have any issues with it. But you know, overall, I'll say this is a win, and we'll chalk that up as a successful upgrade, or at least side grade, to this 2014 Impala Limited. As mentioned, it should really, I would assume, any of the Impalas for 9th gen and the then I guess carryover Limited, this should work for the cars that do not have the functionality through your gauge cluster here. Some do. I think maybe the LTZ, maybe the SS's, but this one does not. And you don't have to make a trip to the dealership. Save yourself some money, and you can get your own key fob going for pretty cheap. I think I got it on sale for like 40, maybe 50 bucks. And yeah, overall, as always, feel free to subscribe, like, share, comment. I plan on having a lot more videos on the Impala now that I have it. Mostly some maintenance stuff, some other stuff. I'm gonna do a radio install, backup camera. Stay tuned for those if you are a fan of the Impala or have one. And also, of course, content on my Camaro, my wife's Mustang. We have an El Camino SS over here. Bunch of, you know, home repair stuff, car maintenance stuff, all the fun stuff. So hit that bell, hit that subscribe button, and as always, peace.